Hello and welcome to the Leaderboard, a show where I rank every game that I've played because hierarchy is based, actually. As always, I'm your hostess Nicole, aka Nilcad Naquita, and all views expressed herein are my subjective opinion, however they are also true because I am the arbiter of taste on this show, which is to say, I get final say on where things go on the leaderboard. The first game I'll be talking about today is Pixel Puzzle Collection, a free Picross game developed and published by Konami for iOS and Android devices, first released October 9th, 2018. For those of you unfamiliar with Picross, it's a genre of puzzle game, which on face value seems like it could kind of work on pencil and paper, except for the fact that usually they rely on the final picture. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a genre of puzzle game where you have a grid, you have numbers at the left and top sides of this grid that tell you how many of the spaces in each column and row are colored in and how many are not. Each number on the side of the grid refers to a grouping. So, for example, if you have a 5x5 grid and the topmost row has 3 ones, then that means you have 3 groups of 1 block each. Which would, of course, mean color the first one, leave the second one blank, color the third one, leave the fourth one blank, color the fifth one, because that's the only way that can shake out. It gets more difficult as you get larger grids and smaller groupings of colored dots, obviously. So the goal is to logic your way through all of this, kind of figuring out what can and can't have a color in it, and what has to, and what is definitely blank, and what may or may not be, and just kind of narrowing things down until eventually you complete it, and the result is a picture, pixel art specifically. Now that, as I sort of almost started to say earlier before I realized I was getting way ahead of myself, this seems like it could kind of work on pencil and paper, but in practice it couldn't really, because usually the final picture that you're making is not actually like one-to-one exactly the same as the blocks you colored in. Usually it'll then add color to sort of give some more definition to the picture. The picture that you're making with the colored dots is it's kind of a rough approximation of what the final picture actually is, and it has to kind of mess around with the colors and whatnot to kind of take it all the way there. It's a lot of fun. I'm very fond of Picross. I own 5 Picross games on Switch, and I've run through I've completed all of Pixel Puzzle Collection on mobile. There's a lot of puzzles in Pixel Puzzle Collection, but Picross is just crack, you guys. It is just heroin. That's it. It is simply I inject it and my brain makes the happy juice. And then if I stop injecting it, my brain goes, "Hey, what the fuck did you stop for?" And then I start again, and the brain's like, "Yeah, there you go. Now you're doing it." Because it hits a very specific level of challenge where you do actually need to know what you're doing, and there is a certain degree of actual skill involved, but it's not to the degree of a really hard Sudoku or something. You need to understand the rules to a significant degree to make it work as you get into more and more complex puzzles, but it never gets to the point where you're not just basically following a set of best practices. So it's this really specific level of mindless but also kind of requiring a bit of your attention that just it's incredible. It's incredibly engaging. I really enjoy it. And this version of it, the Pixel Puzzle Collection, not a bad version of Picross. Has some slight issues in terms of interface. It uses the touchscreen, of course, and you can also use buttons on screen, which I wouldn't recommend. It works basically pretty well, but there are some niggles about oh well, this in this particular situation things are a little bit more cumbersome than they necessarily need to be with one in particular is that this one does not include an option to mark a space, because in a lot of Picross games you have the two I definitely know what this block is markers, which is you're coloring it in or putting an X through it, but usually there's also a third mark that's available, which is something else. In some games it's like a little triangle that you put there, in some it's like a little diamond. The point is, there's another marker that you can put in place that says like, there's something significant about this block, but I'm not definitely coloring it in or marking it out yet, right? And unfortunately, Pixel Puzzle Collection does not have that, and could really use it. Instead, when I'm sort of figuring out the more complex puzzles, I just have to keep track of which X's I place are actually X's and which X's I place are temporary X's for the sake of, making it clear what I'm doing and counting out the blocks and whatnot. So that's a bit of an issue, and it can lead to some situations being a bit more cumbersome than they need to be. Sometimes it can lead to me having to start over a puzzle because I accidentally left an X where it was not supposed to be, and now it's just fucked. So that's not ideal. But overall, the interface is fine. You can definitely get it. I mean, I did get it done, and I think that the puzzles are generally pretty engaging. And what I really like about this game is that instead of it just being a sort of random assortment of pixel art, which is what your games like, say, Picross S on the Switch is, where those games don't have any like tie-in or anything like that, so they just made some pixel art. And don't get me wrong, I like that pixel art. It's good pixel art. It looks nice. It's satisfying to make. But Konami's Pixel Puzzle Collection is more interesting to me, I think, because the pictures that you are making are actual sprites from old Konami games. I think some of them are like pixel art drawings of Konami characters rather than directly importing the sprite into the game. For example, there are a bunch of puzzles where you're making characters from Tokimeki Memorial, and I don't think that those are like actual sprites from an old version of Tokimeki Memorial, because I recently like watched Tim Rogers' 6-hour video on the game several times, and at no point did I see any in-game asset that looked the same as those pictures that I was making in this game. So I think that those are just like new original pixel art of these characters. But a lot of the stuff that you'll get is like an actual sprite taken from a game. Like some of them are power-ups from various games, some of them are like little enemies, some of them are character sprites. I think there are also other examples besides the Tokimemo ones of just sort of like pixel art recreations, but it's cool, I think, that a lot of it actually is old NES sprites, in particular, or maybe old MSX sprites in some cases. Very, very neat, in my opinion. Very cool. You also get a lot of representation for some like really obscure series, which I think is very nice. I mean, I don't know if those series are really obscure in Japan, which is probably what this game was like more targeting than America. But here in America, a lot of it is very obscure, and that to me is cool, because a lot of the games featured in here never made it to America. I already mentioned Tokimeki Memorial has like a whole category. You make a picture of every single girl from Tokimeki Memorial in this game. That game has never made it to America in any form. I don't think that even any of like the sequels or spin-offs of Tokimemo have actually made it to America officially. I know that the Tokimeki Memorial girls side games have some fan translations, but yeah, I don't think there's ever been an official American release of a Tokimeki Memorial game, and that's neat. That's cool. I like that. I like that there's the inclusion of this like weird stuff, and there are a bunch of other examples of just like I'll finish a puzzle and it'll show me like, oh yes, this is from such and such game, and the game's title is just completely in Japanese. I'm like, okay, this clearly did not make it to America then, and that's neat. I appreciate that. The other cool thing that this game has going for it that a lot of other Picross games don't is that it has boss and mid-boss pictures, which are built up gradually over the course of multiple puzzles. So you'll get mid-bosses just all the fucking time, and a mid-boss is a larger picture that is made out of 4 15 by 15, I believe, puzzles. I think that's right. It's either 15... I think it's 15 by 15. So yeah, the puzzles in this game don't get bigger than 15 by 15, but you'll have these larger images that are made up of multiple puzzles. Mid-bosses are always made up of 4 puzzles, and you just make this like 2x2 larger picture that usually is like, oh, this is a boss sprite, or oh, this is some character artwork or whatever. And then aside from mid bosses, there are also boss puzzles, which you can only do once every hour and a half or so, which is a little bit annoying because I just kind of want to blaze through them, you know, like especially once I got towards the end of the game and I had finished all of the regular puzzles and all I had left were boss puzzles, and it's like, oh well, now I can only do one puzzle every half hour or so. That's kind of annoying. So that's not ideal, but the idea of the boss puzzles themselves very cool because the boss ones are 4x4 instead of 2x2. So they're like actually pretty sizable images, like and usually they're like something significant from the game, like a portrait of Dracula, or a portrait of like this samurai character from a puzzle game that I don't think made it to the West, or in the case of Tokimeki Memorial, like a big portrait of Shiori, who is the hardest character in that game to romance, and the one who's on the box art, and the one who is considered like the intended ideal romance option, but is like incredibly difficult to get. It's really neat. Like I really would love to see more game companies make this type of a thing. Make just a mobile cross game where you make old game assets. I just think that's fucking cool. Like that's just a cool, fun idea that I'm totally behind, and it could be improved upon in some ways. Like I said, add a third marker button so that you can actually fuck around like that. Probably get rid of the eraser button because that's not really necessary. Most Picross games just have it so that if you hit the marker button on a space a second time, it removes the mark. I don't think there needs to be like a separate eraser button that you need to switch to, which is how this game does it. Get rid of the idea of having the bosses be an every hour and a half thing. I think you can speed that up if you do like a microtransaction, or if you like fucking watch an ad or some shit. I don't know. I didn't bother. Fuck that. Just remove that feature. I would, if you improved upon this game and fixed these like little niggling problems that it has, I would be totally fine like paying $5 or $10 for it. Like I think that it would be a good value. I mean, I think it is a good value as it exists, and I think that even for a little bit of money, it would be a good value. So yeah, more companies who have like old pixel art games that you can just turn into a Picross collection, please do that. I would appreciate it. That would be cool. So now is time to rank it, I think, because I don't think there's much more I can say about it beyond that. And my first instinct was to put this in the 4 stars, pretty fucking good category, but thinking about it a little harder, I do think that those few like little issues with it that I have, like the slightly cumbersome user interface, the lack of like an ability to mark things other than by filling them in or Xing them, the fact that you have to wait for a new boss puzzle, I think that kind of brings it down to a 3-star, because it really does like hurt the experience in some ways, especially compared with other Picross games which have been doing this much better for years. So yeah, based on that, I'm going to put it in the 3-star. Also, after you've finished all the puzzles, you unlock like hard mode, but it's literally like the same thing except you can't X out. You can't put an X in spaces that definitely aren't colored, so you just have to memorize which spaces are and aren't colored, and that's dumb. That's stupid. That's not a good way to increase the challenge. That's not interesting. That's not fun. Fuck you. So yeah, overall, I think I'm gonna put this in the 3-star category. It's definitely better than Assault Android Cactus. I can say that for sure. I like this game a lot more than Assault Android Cactus. And you know what? I think I also prefer it over Mario and Sonic. So it is going to be at the top of the 3-star category, making Konami's Pixel Puzzle Collection on iOS and Android our new number 7. Go check it out if you haven't. It is free. The next game we're going to be talking about today is LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, developed by Traveler's Tales and published by LucasArts. This game was first released for Nintendo DS, PlayStation 3, Wii, and Xbox 360 on 6th of November 2007 in North America, and would, in the following days and weeks, be released in Australia and European regions, and then later find its way to Windows, OS X, iOS, and Android. I shudder to think of how this game would play on a phone, on a mobile device. That sounds horrifying. But hey, best of luck to anybody who tried it. So, the LEGO Star Wars are kind of an interesting piece of video game cultural history, because they sort of birthed an entire sort of subgenre of LEGO games developed by Traveler's Tales, which all have a very particular approach. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest up front here. I I don't much care for the Lego games as they exist. I think that they're a lot better than a lot of other tie-in games that have existed over the years. They certainly have more of a defined identity. They have more of like a sense that they were made out of a desire to make something that would fit the licenses in a meaningful way, rather than, hey, let's just take a very normal, basic sort of game formula and just tweak some things to add the license into it and just kind of make it, you know? So that's cool. I respect it. I respect the approach that was taken to it, and I think that it's good that this is... I think that it actually had a pretty significant hand in changing how the industry approaches licensed products, which is very good. But I'm not huge on the games themselves. They're sort of extremely basic beat-em-ups with some light puzzle-solving elements, but, like, extremely light puzzle-solving, where the solution to every puzzle basically amounts to switch to the character who can contextually interact with the thing in front of you and have them contextually interact with it. And this is used in some ways to sort of encourage replay value. You'll go through the level the first time in story mode with only the characters who are there at that point in the story available. For example, the first time you go through the Naboo Forest section, the only characters you'll have access to are Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Jar Jar Binks. And Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon have basically the same abilities, because they're both just Jedi guy. They have a lightsaber and the Force, and that's about it. Whereas you can then go through after having beaten the level, you can return to it in free play, where you can play as any character you want to play as, and you'll pick the first character that you want to play as, and then the game will automatically fill out the rest of your party with one of every type of character to make sure that you can interact with everything, which kind of gives away this game's approach to puzzle solving, because it really is just, there are a number of character archetypes, all of whom carry various keys, and there are various locks within the level that you need to insert those keys into. So a lot of times you'll come across a pile of bricks that has to be built into something, which anyone can do. Sometimes you'll come to a literal key door, like a locked door that you have to interact with as a certain droid who is capable of interfacing with that particular type of computer, be it R2-D2 or C-3PO or whatever, or not even C-3PO, but like a protocol droid or an astromech droid, because there are other protocol and astromech droids in this game besides R2-D2 and C-3PO, and they can also do it. Because again, these are character archetypes, not specific characters. Sometimes it'll be, oh, there's a thing here that you need to use the Force on in order to do something weird with it, so you'll need a Jedi to do that. Sometimes there's these silver blocks which can be blown up if you have an explosive device, so you'll need somebody who carries thermal detonators. That kind of thing. Like, sometimes it's, oh, there's this thing up here that needs to be jumped really high to, so you need to play as a Gungan for that. It is, I would say, engaging to a point, but I wouldn't say that it's all that interesting. I think that these are perfectly fine games to play. I don't hate playing them, but I also don't see any real reason to come back to them, because there's just not that much going on. And mind you, like, I get that these games are for kids, and that kids don't usually want to be challenged too much, but I feel like they probably could have done a little bit more with what they had without ruining it for the kids. Like, maybe just give a little bit more of like an actual system to interact with in combat, but just don't make it like necessary. So that way kids can just mash their way through and not have any trouble, and adults can, actually kind of engage with it a little bit and kind of learn how to do different things. Maybe also take a slight change to the approach used when it comes to death, because death in this game is basically entirely meaningless, and I don't think that that's necessary to make a game fun for kids. Lots of kids play games where you lose lives or what have you, and it's just, or even just lose a little bit of progress and are fine with it. In this game, when you die, you lose a little bit of money, and immediately respawn, and it's not ever going to matter unless you are, like, constantly dying, because you're constantly finding money if you're playing the game the way it's intended to be played, so the amount of exploration you're doing will always outweigh the amount of money you're losing, unless, again, you're just, like, constantly dying in a way that doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense why anyone would die that much while playing this game, because it's not a difficult game. The other thing that I think is most interesting about this game is how it handles its collectibles, because the reason that you can come into levels with full parties of characters who can do basically everything and, kind of go through the entire thing again is because a lot of the optional puzzles are just to find various collectibles. You can find more coins, you can find mini kits, as they're called. I think there are a couple other collectibles. From what I recall, every game in the Lego series adds like different unique collectibles, and I cannot keep them straight. But the things that are definitely always in there are collecting coins, which will fill a meter over the course of the level, and if you fill the meter all the way, then you'll get the true Jedi rank for that level, which will, when you get enough of those, will unlock special levels where you can do more coin collecting. And I remember those levels being pretty neat. They're like these like weird sandbox things that are kind of cool. And then, as mentioned, the minifigures, which I believe there are 10 of per level, or maybe it was 7. I think it was 10. I think it was 10. I think there are 10 mini kits per level. And collecting all 10 mini kits in a level will turn each kit into like a piece of a Lego figure, like a sculpture, like a build. And so if you collect all 10 of them, then you will unlock that build for viewing in-game, which is a pretty neat reward. I think that's cool because Legos are cool and Lego builds are cool, and they're especially cool when they're like tied into something, when it's a Lego recreation of a thing that you have already seen in non-Lego form. So I think that's pretty cool. That's like, I actually like the way that this game handles its collections, because it's got the one that is for more game content and the one that is for cool little visual things that you can unlock. Like I think that kind of is a good way to reward everybody regardless of what they're kind of looking for out of the game. And so good on you for that. I just really wish that these collectibles were locked behind something other than putting weirdly shaped keys into weirdly shaped locks. Like, it's just, I'm trying really hard not to be too hard on these games, or this game, since it's a compilation of them, because like there's a lot that is cool about what they do, and there's a lot that I do respect. I don't know, I can't really get that much into it, and it's not just because I'm like too old for it or whatever, because there are plenty of kids games that I'm totally fine playing. It's just the specific way that it goes about trying to be accessible to children turns me off of it. But yeah, I'm trying really hard not to let that, like, not to say that like, oh, this game sucks because of that, because like there is good stuff here. There is valuable stuff that it does that a lot of games have have learned from, and a lot of games probably should learn from but haven't. So, and of course, what I haven't even touched upon is the fact that there's a huge amount of charm to these games as well. The way that they present themselves is great. There's a lot of fun humor. The cutscenes are Lego pantomimes of Star Wars cutscenes, which is just, they're hilarious a lot of the time. Like, they have little jokes thrown in. Nobody is actually saying words. They're just like grunting at each other and like gesturing. It's great. It's really fun. Frankly, I would love just like a mini series or like a series of shorts that is just the cutscenes from this game without all the fucking gameplay in between, because the cutscenes in this game are immaculate. They're wonderful. They're delightful. And I should probably also mention that the rosters in all of the Lego games are absolutely absurd. Like, they plumb the depths of whatever property they're adapting to find just as many like random little characters that have appeared once that they can turn into a playable character and throw in there and make somebody go, oh, hey, that guy's in there, cool. Like, it is like really shocking how big the rosters each of these games has. Let me see if I can like find how many characters are in Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga. Okay, I can't seem to find an exact count of how many characters are in the game, but it's got to be like at least 100. Like, it's crazy how many characters there are in this game. And, if you're a big Star Wars fan, then like that actually is a significant like draw, I would imagine. Like, you can play as all these random little characters that are like, they've just appeared at some point and they're just kind of there, and they're like, most people don't care about them, but if you do, then hey, they're here and you can play as them. as well as there being just like, you know, a bunch of little fun joke characters that are enjoyable to play as. And as mentioned, like the game already has so much charm, and it does a lot of stuff with different characters and like how they act in gameplay and how they interact with each other. When C-3PO takes damage, he gradually loses limbs, and if you're left at like 1 or 2 hearts, then he can actually be stuck like with one arm and one leg, like just hopping around everywhere. It's hilarious. So yeah, overall, I would say that Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga is a pretty fun game that's worth playing if the concept of a very simplistic puzzle brawler without like a whole lot of challenge to it appeals to you in like a Star Wars setting, or in a setting that makes use of Legos. If either of those properties appeals to you and you're not put off by how simplistic it is, then I would say definitely check this game out. It is a good game overall, I would say, in terms of the impact that it has had and the things that it does that I actually do appreciate a lot. There's just certain aspects of it that kind of stop me from really wanting to put it as high as some other people probably would. So I think for this one I'm probably feeling a 3-star range, because it does some really cool stuff, but also like I don't find the actual gameplay to be all that engaging. Now within the 3-star range, I would say it's definitely above Audio Surf 2, because Audio Surf 2 is just like... Audio Surf 2 is so... It's very rough in how it is developed and how like it approaches things, which makes sense. It was a one-person project. I'm not saying that it's a bad game or anything, but Lego Star Wars is a lot more polished. It's a lot more... sort of cohesively designed and holds together better, I think. I would also put it above Assault on Android Cactus, a game which I am just really not that big of a fan of, honestly. I think where I'm going to start having some trouble is whether I want to put it above Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games or not, because I think that Mario and Sonic might be a better minigame collection than Lego Star Wars is a brawler, but I think Lego Star Wars might be a better licensed game than Mario and Sonic is, because Mario and Sonic doesn't do jack shit with its license, and I mean that's fine because the mini games are good, but it is also weird. It is very weird that like the most that you see of the Mario and Sonic licenses in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games is like there's a bunch of Mario and Sonic characters everywhere, and Sonic has the highest speed stat in the game, but he still runs at like a normal human being speed. That's very strange. That's odd. That's a weird way to approach a license. Whereas Lego Star Wars gets the absolute most out of its license. But I think Mario and Sonic is just more solid overall as a gameplay experience. That said, I think I'm gonna have to give it to Lego Star Wars because there's so much of it and it has so much charm built into it that I think that I would probably take longer to get sick of Lego Star Wars than I would to get sick of Mario and Sonic if I was limited to each of those games, you know? So, coming in at the new number 8 is Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga. And that is going to be all for this episode of the Leaderboard. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves listening to me talking shit about a very popular game that I still kind of like overall. And just proselytizing for a cool game that I think a lot of people aren't really aware of that I wish more people were aware of. I'll see you guys next time when I'm talking about whatever game I'm talking about next. Y'all have a good night.